gods made Enkidu twice, but the second time they made him wrong. This is what the priests whisper when they think no one listens, when the temple fires burn low and the shadows pool thick between the ziggurat steps. They say the first Enkidu died as heroes die, mourned by kings, and descended to the house of dust, where all mortals go. But something came back wearing his shape, and only Gilgamesh knew the difference. It began the day they killed the bull of heaven. The beast had torn the earth open with its breath. Each snort cracked the ground, swallowing hundreds into chasms that led nowhere good. The goddess Ishtar had sent it in rage, spurned by Gilgamesh, and it came bellowing across the plain toward Uruk with murder in its cosmic eyes. The people fled behind mud brick walls, while their king and his wild companion went forth to face the divine creature, two against a force that could unmake cities. Enkidu seized the bull by its tail, holding fast while muscles corded beneath his matted hair, while his feet carved trenches in the bloodied earth. Gilgamesh drove the sword between its shoulder blades, up into the furnace of its heart. The bull screamed, and in that sound was all the fury of heaven denied. Then it fell, and the earth itself seemed to exhale. They stood victorious in a crater of their own making. Gilgamesh, resplendent in royal Sumerian gold and lapis lazuli, raised his blade to the silent gods. Enkidu, still clutching the bull's massive tail, tore free one of its horns. The crescent of divine bone gleamed impossibly white, veined with light that hurt to see. He lifted it like a prize, like a trophy taken from heaven itself. That night, they feasted in the palace. Wine flowed, musicians played, and the people of Uruk celebrated their deliverance. But at the height of the revelry, Enkidu fell silent. He stared at the bull's horn mounted on the wall, catching torchlight, and his eyes went distant with something that was not quite memory and not quite dream. "What do you see?" Gilgamesh asked. "A door," Enkidu said. "A door I should not have opened." He would not explain further, and soon the celebration pulled them apart into separate eddies of the crowd. Gilgamesh lost sight of his companion for a time, found him again near dawn, standing alone in the courtyard, staring at his own shadow as if it had betrayed him. The sickness came 3 days later. Enkidu collapsed in the cedar garden behind the palace, convulsing, foam at his lips. The priests came with their incantations and bitter herbs, but nothing touched whatever burned inside him. For 12 days he lay fevered, speaking in languages no one knew, describing places no living man had seen. He spoke of 7 gates, each darker than the last. He spoke of the queen of the underworld weighing his heart against a feather made of ash. He spoke of a price unpaid, a theft that could not be forgiven. On the 13th day he died. Gilgamesh wept as kings should not weep, as gods do not weep. He ordered a statue carved from cedar and dressed it in fine linen. He filled clay tablets with cuneiform praise of his companion's deeds. He sacrificed honey and grain and precious oil. He did everything the rites demanded and more, spending his grief like wealth, as if mourning itself could buy back the dead. They laid Enkidu's body on a pyre built from cedar of Lebanon, wood precious enough to ransom kingdoms. As the flames consumed him, Gilgamesh stood watch until dawn turned the smoke to gold and carried his friend toward whatever waited beyond the stars. Then he returned to the palace and tried to learn how to be alone again. 3 nights later, Enkidu came home. Gilgamesh woke to a sound like fingers scraping clay. He rose, reaching for his weapon, and found a figure standing in the doorway of his chamber. Moonlight fell across a body he knew better than his own. The powerful frame, the matted hair, the scars from 1,000 battles fought side by side. Enkidu, Gilgamesh breathed, and the word was both joy and horror. The figure stepped into the light. It wore Enkidu's face perfectly. It moved with his gait. When it smiled, the expression was achingly familiar. But its eyes were wrong. Not their color or their shape, but what looked out through them. Something that observed from a great distance. Something that studied rather than saw. "I came back," it said in Enkidu's voice. "The way was open. I came back to you, my brother." Gilgamesh wanted to embrace him, wanted to weep again, this time with relief. But the king who had walked with gods and slain divine beasts had learned to trust his instincts, and every instinct screamed wrong. "How?" he asked carefully. "Through the door." The thing that wore Enkidu's face tilted its head. The door, the bull's horn, opened. "When I died, I saw it. On the other side, I was still alive. I only had to step through." "The dead do not return," Gilgamesh said. "The queen of the underworld does not release those who enter her domain." "But I am here." It spread its arms, and the gesture was so perfectly Enkidu that Gilgamesh's resolve nearly broke. "Touch me. I am flesh. I am warm. I breathe. I am your companion, returned from darkness. Is this not what you wanted?" What he wanted, yes. More than immortality, more than glory, he wanted his friend back. But the priests had taught him the old laws, the ones written before cuneiform, before language itself. They said, "The dead belong to dust." They said, "What crosses back over wears only the memory of life." They said, "There is always a price." "What price did you pay?" Gilgamesh asked. The thing that wore Enkidu's face stopped smiling. For a moment, something rippled beneath its skin, as if the face were a mask poorly fitted. When it spoke again, its voice held harmonics that were not quite human. "The price was not mine to pay." Gilgamesh understood then. The bull of heaven, killed by hubris and mortal hands, its horn severed and taken as trophy, still holding a spark of divine power. Enkidu, dying, had reached through death itself and seized that power, forced open a door that should stay closed. But death demands balance, a life for a life. "Who paid it?" Gilgamesh asked, though he already knew. "Someone will," it said. "Someone close enough to call the dead home. Someone whose love opened the way." The king of Uruk, who had never known fear in battle, felt ice crystallize in his chest. By mourning so deeply, by refusing to let Enkidu go, he had provided the thread for something to follow back into the world of the living. His love was the door, and now that door stood open, and something old and hungry had come through, wearing his friend's stolen face. "I won't let you stay," Gilgamesh said quietly. "You cannot send me back." The thing's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "I am Enkidu. Your tablets say so. Your priests proclaimed it. The city saw him return. Would you tell them their hero is something else? Would you kill me again and break their hearts? You are trapped by your own love, king. I am the grief you made solid. I am the price you will not pay." Gilgamesh looked at the thing wearing his friend's face, and for a long moment he wavered. But he was Gilgamesh, 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal, and he had learned hard truths in his time. Love could be a weapon turned against you. Grief could birth monsters. And sometimes the greatest act of friendship was letting go. He walked past the thing to the wall where the bull's horn hung, catching moonlight like captured divinity. He lifted it down, felt its impossible weight, its wrongness. This was the key, the door, the crack through which death had leaked backward into life. "Enkidu died," Gilgamesh said. "I laid him on cedar and burned him clean. I wept for him and honored him. And that is finished. You are not him. You are what my grief summoned, and I am done grieving." He brought the horn down hard against the palace floor. It cracked with a sound like thunder swallowed, and light bled from the break, not the warm light of sun or fire, but the cold luminescence of the underworld, the glow of things that should stay buried. The thing shrieked, its form rippled, Enkidu's face sliding away like clay, revealing something beneath that had no name in the language of the living. It was shadow given hunger, absence given shape, the howling void between stars pressed into mortal form. It lunged for Gilgamesh, but the king drove the broken horn forward like a blade, through the chest where a heart would be if this thing had ever been human. Light erupted from the wound. The creature came apart, unraveling into threads of darkness that the spreading glow consumed. For just a moment in the heart of that dissolution, Gilgamesh saw his friend's face again, the real face, filled with gratitude and peace. Then nothing remained but ash and moonlight and the sound of his own breathing. Gilgamesh stood alone in his chamber, holding a broken horn from a dead god, and finally, truly, let Enkidu go. The priests found him at dawn, the horn pieces arranged before him in ritual dismissal. They took them away to be buried deep beneath the ziggurat, sealed behind clay tablets inscribed with warnings. The official story was that the king had been visited by a demon in the night, attracted by the bull's divine remnants, and had destroyed it. They were not entirely wrong. Gilgamesh never spoke of what truly happened, not even to Shamhat when she came to bless the palace with sacred oils and prayers. He had his clay tablets recording Enkidu's heroism polished and displayed. He honored his friend's memory, but carefully now, with the discipline of a man who understood that love, ungoverned, could crack the world open and let terrible things crawl through. On quiet nights, when the city slept and the ziggurat's shadow stretched long across Uruk, Gilgamesh would sometimes stand in his courtyard and look at the stars. He thought about doors and prices, and the difference between what we want and what should be. He thought about the thing that had followed his grief home, wearing the face of love. And he was grateful in a way the priests would never understand, for the strength to break what he most wished to keep.